You received a call from an inmate at the Department of Corrections. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Well, hello there, Yellow Mellow. I haven't heard from you in a while. How's it going? Ah, yes. That day-to-day life, it can be pretty tedious at times, but you're a strong person, and I'm sure all those little tiffs and disagreements and all that drama, you can definitely handle it. Oh, yeah, that Dateline episode. I saw that. Yeah, I know. I hate seeing stories like that, but considering the outcome, I guess we can get a little bit of closure, especially the family. Yeah, I know. For 13 years, Raymond Moody kept that secret, and then something. I guess the police doing their hard work and getting closer to him. I guess it finally convinced him that speaking out is the best thing to do. So at least the family was able to find her body and get a little bit of closure. You know, things that were people commit a violent crime like that and then live for years. There was a case where a person lived for close to 40 years. In his mind, he knew he had violently murdered this person. He knew the family was desperate for answers, and he just kept it to himself, thinking that as long as he doesn't say anything, he won't be caught, and that's a good thing. But in their mind, they have to think that when they see a police officer driving behind them or walking to a store and there's an investigation going on and there's a presence of officers, they would have to think that maybe they could get caught or something. But I'm glad that Brittany Drexel was able to be found and her family can get some kind of closure. And I'm also glad that this guy confessed and was able to answer some of the questions rather than saying why he killed her. He was just saying he's a monster. But his story can't help other people, so I'm happy about that. It's just that I wish we didn't have to go through all this tragedy to get there. We can prevent it. I mean, after all, it was like you were convicted of murder at 17, and Brittany, she disobeyed her parents and wanted to run off and join her friends at spring break, even though a lot of them didn't even want her to be there. She was headstrong, and it wound up costing her, especially hopping into a car with strangers just for her own personal satisfaction. She wanted to, I guess, get back to the hotel quickly so she can join her friends. And she had good intentions. It's just that in this world, you just cannot trust everybody. And she would have been better off sticking with people that she trusted. Somebody should have walked back with her. It's
You have
just
60 seconds remaining.
there's so much in hindsight we could think about on that. And I'm sure there's cases out there that we did prevent a murder from occurring because people talked. It's just that we won't know. But we have to keep it up. We have to keep broadcasting this stuff. And I'm glad that story got out. Well, good. Yes, talk to the other people over there in the in your
You
network.
have 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, well, thanks for calling and thanks for giving me your insight into that. And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more, clear our minds, and you can share your knowledge with other folks and help them avoid all this as well. Okay, good. Wonderful. Okay. Thanks for calling, and I will talk to you later. Welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And in this episode, we were discussing a Dateline episode about Brittany Drexel. She was a 17-year-old who was abducted, and her murderer, Raymond Moody, was charged with kidnapping, murder, and first-degree sexual misconduct in her death. And what stands out in this particular case is that for 13 years, he was on the run. And for 13 years, the FBI and local authorities did not give up. They wanted to bring justice. And that drive, that determination, is what sets us apart from the bad side of the world. It shows that communities care, that people aren't just numbers, they're not figures in the background. This woman, or this young girl, was taken from the world prematurely and viciously murdered. She was strangled to death, and she did nothing to deserve that. This is not like a war where we're getting attacked and we need to defend ourselves. This was just a girl who trusted a couple, two people, to pick her up, and it had disastrous results by a person who really didn't care. Murders her, buries her body. He actually went back to visit the graveside, or the burial spot, we should say, and you know, the family's out there suffering. All they want is closure, and he wasn't willing to give it to them until they came pretty much knocking at his door. So hats off to the people that kept that up, and hats off to the folks that broadcast this, to share it with the world. And a lot of us are infatuated by crime stories because we just want to know, why did this happen? And stranger on stranger murders, which is the case here, they're hard to solve because you have no motive. You don't. When you're interviewing people, you interview people in a close circle, and usually like the spouse or a close relative or something. But when somebody just pops up out of nowhere, it's difficult to find out why. And once you find out, or at least get an idea of why this crime occurred, then you can start gathering suspects. And, you know, in this investigation, they did interview him, and they did track him. And it's just a matter of, when you do things properly, it takes time, and you have to follow the letter of the law. Because if you go to court and you find out that you lost evidence, or you cut corners, or you allowed evidence in that shouldn't have been, it could ruin everything. And then this guy could say, yes, I killed her and I got away with it. I know in the United States, back in the 30s and 40s, you know, people could kill somebody, go to trial, and be released because of race. And That's very heartbreaking because you catch the people right away, but nobody's willing to lock them up. And in some cases, years later, they pay a heavy toll for it. So the thing that fascinates me about this kind of story is it's like the one man, he was a family friend, and Dateline did a story on him as well, and he killed these little boys' mother. Just brutal murder. Went into her bedroom and hid in there, and then when she came into the bedroom, he wound up strangling her with a coat hanger. And he lived for like 40 years, had his family, stayed in the community not too far from where the murder scene was, and just watched all this over the years, remaining silent, because he felt this person had to die and he didn't deserve to go to prison. So it's almost like the reverse of a standard prison sentence. A person commits a crime, gets convicted, goes to prison, and then gets out and starts a life to prove that I learned my lesson, I'm not a bad person, and I want to move on and put all this behind me the best I can. He was living this life with no suspicions until good, hard work, police investigation discovered him. And I'm glad there's no statute of limitation on murder. There are some crimes out there that people need time to figure out. And with technology changing, in this particular case, they collected a palm print and DNA, but when the murder occurred, they didn't have the ability to test it and match it up. And then as time moved on and technology grew, we were able to figure that out. And there's going to be a lot of unsolved murders because of that. And it's because people care. There's no such thing as, even a street person or a runaway. These people deserve justice. Someone figures that they're not important enough and then kill them. And these folks who go on the run for the longest time, in their mind they're thinking, I could get caught at any time. Yet as the years go by, they're thinking, hey, I got away with it. I'm not going to worry about it. And they can see the life they could have had they not committed the murder or the violent crime. They're sitting in prison thinking, I didn't have to do this. I could have lived a good life. And this man who killed this woman and left her children without proper parenting, the natural parenting, he had his own family that if he had been caught at the time, he wouldn't have had a wife, he wouldn't have had children. But he had that opportunity. And now I wonder what goes through their mind. Do they stand by him after learning what he did and the secret that he kept? Is the trauma even greater because he was caught after hiding this for so long? He didn't even confess. And we want everybody to heal. But people like that just run away, it's kind of hard to feel any sympathy for him, any respect for him. But with the way the system works in the United States, you're innocent until proven guilty. So these folks, unless they're convicted in a court of law, we can't condemn them. Can't treat them as guilty people. So they could roam around out there. People could know what was going on and just not have the evidence until we can catch them. Or evidence until we can at least conduct a thorough investigation and find enough to get a conviction on them. So, just kind of think about it. You could be living next door to somebody who committed a violent offense. And after this person is caught, you could sit back and think, I never would have guessed that. I know when I did undercover work and I revealed my true identity and arrested the person, I got a lot of I never knew. I had no idea you were a cop because I was playing the role to the point where they didn't suspect anything. It didn't have the look, it didn't have the language, it didn't have mannerism, whatever it was. And that's good for the team that I was working with. And likewise, people who commit crimes, they can do the same thing. They can fool you, they can deceive you. And that's scary. But imagine going through all that, playing that as if you had already been convicted and released from prison, to have the community come up and just look at you and think, all these years you didn't say anything and you ran around out there. It's hard. It's really hard. Even for prison reformists to justify something like that. I think the best way to get rehabilitated is you commit the crime, admit it. Killing people isn't necessarily going to keep you out of prison. It's just going to make things worse. And committing a crime is just far-fetched. But there's some people out there who it's just something they can't turn off. Especially these people that have these fantasies of killing folks and violent offenses. So if we give them an opportunity to talk it out, to work with somebody who understands, this Raymond Moody, he could sit in a group session and talk to people about what was going through his mind because he's obviously feeling some guilt. And to sit with other incarcerated people and talk about it could give them the closure they were looking for and help them to run away from this deviant activity. And in society, it's not the people that commit the crimes that are the oddballs. It's the people that don't, the people that stay pious and that do good and that work to gain a good positive reputation. That's outside the box. Inside the box is to steal, lie, cheat, murder, attack people. That's human nature. And so if we've figured out ways to live a good positive life and follow the law, we should share that with folks. I think people like Raymond Moody need a good mentor. And I think Raymond Moody can be a good mentor. And once a crime's been committed, especially when it's been years ago, there's really not a lot you can do about it. healing is probably the strongest aspect of that. We got to move on. And we can't forget the people, that's for sure. Can't just say that Brittany Drexel is dead, so nothing else we can do. We can remember her. And we can share her story just like Dateline did, and other teenagers can say, yeah, if mom says not to go, I shouldn't go. Or if somebody stops and offers me a ride, I shouldn't get in the car. And even with these Uber and Lyft drivers, they have identification and stuff. If a person comes to pick you up, the apps follow them pretty well. Check. There's no shame in asking for identification from a police officer that stopped you and asked you some questions. Who are you? Prove it. And I know they said Raymond Moody's, one of his first victims, was able to get away. And the reporter was asking her what prompted her to get away. And she's, I don't know. It's like it was in her back of her mind to just run. And this is something that we need to teach folks, because it's the thing I like to state: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We can prevent these by happening by talking about it. And there's a lot of stuff we don't want to talk about until it's too late. So why take that chance? Families are so distant now. We just need to sit down. Dads need to go for a walk with the kids and say, what would you do if a person walked up and said he knows me and he's going to give you a ride to the house? And what would happen if a person comes home from school and is grabbed from behind? Do your children know how to react to that? And when you watch shows like that, or you listen to people from prison talk, form a series of questions and go over them. It's like a fire drill. Just one day, kind of have a meeting and sit down and what do we do if there's a fire? What do we do if the police show up at our front door? What do you do if you're locked out? Or if somebody passes out? If we prepare for this, we can go to bed comfortable. And we really need to emphasize it, because when I was in the military, following orders was very important. You don't want to say, run up that hill, and people say no, because disaster could strike. The people who are ordering folks around out there on their field, their experience, they want the people to live and they want to win the battle. So they're going to make the decisions that work for us. And of course, there's a few that abuse that, but we're also taught that when you suspect something's not right here, question it. But not everybody goes into the military. And not everybody has that type of background. So parents who need to play an integral part in their children, they need to show that the children need to trust them. And if they say no for something, be prepared to ask why, and to be prepared to answer why. And convince the people that you're not out to fight them or suppress them or take away their rights. You're out to protect them. We're all out, and we need to know who to trust. Even law enforcement oversteps boundaries. And social media, like the one girl who had a law enforcement official drive across the United States to meet her and kill her family, she should know that people on the internet aren't always what they claim to be. And the best way to meet people, I think, is in person. Or at least do some video calls. It's like the episode of Dr. Phil where they were talking about people falling in love on the internet. And he was asking, well, Didn't you think it's suspicious that you never did a video call, a FaceTime moment? It was like, oh no, he always had these excuses. It was like, well, come on, Sit and talk with your kids, your family members about ways to suspect and to investigate people who are reaching out to you. A lot of us, we survive till old age because we have the knowledge and we have the support to do it. Don't our children deserve that as well? Shouldn't we share that with them? And as I mentioned, people in prison are good sources of information. I have a few interviews on the YouTube channel, the Joel Wilborn YouTube channel. Look up Oxyword. And maybe you and your families could listen to some of these folks. Some of these people are talking about how they feel after the crime was committed. And I asked them what advice they would give, and they're giving some very good advice. This is true advice from people who've been there. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you'll be able to look up some of this information, the Raymond Moody story. And we can share with our friends, family, and we can prevent major crimes from occurring within our network. One is plenty, and that's very acceptable. So have yourself a great day and make wonderful memories for tomorrow.